climate justice. Oh, okay. So she will speak to us about challenges. She will speak to us about challenges of sovereign debt and the imperative of full delivery of climate finance obligations under the UNFCCC. Lydie, you have 10 minutes to say something. Yes.
Yes, okay. Shall I start? Thank you so much, and I'd like to thank everyone for being with us this morning and opening your minds to what civil society and non-government experts and advocates have to say. I'm Lydie. I'm from the Philippines. Very happy to be here in Nepal again, the second time this year, but several times in the course of the last few years, and working with the wonderful members of civil society and movements here in Nepal, and meeting many of them also eventually having government posts and seeing them in action. We need no reminding, but it does bear emphasizing that the world faces multiple overlapping emergencies. Climate breakdown, which is the subject of this Sagarmatha Sambaad, rising inequalities, crushing debt burdens, and shrinking democratic spaces. At the heart of all these crises lie two related challenges, which Bimala already alluded to. The first is the challenge of mobilizing urgently needed financial resources at the necessary scale and speed. So we're not just talking about amounts of resources, but the speed in which we need to mobilize them, and in ways that are just, equitable, and accountable. So not just the amount or the speed, but the ways in which we mobilize finance. And the second challenge is to undertake the profound changes in the international financial system, not only to make the first possible, not only to make mobilization of finance possible, but to also stop the enormous and continuing hemorrhaging or bleeding of wealth and natural resources from the global south to the global north. If the bleeding is not stopped, large infusions of finance to the global south in the form of climate finance or ODAs or even direct foreign investments will have little impact. So stopping the bleeding requires profound changes in the relationships, structures, policies, institutions, and behavior in the international financial system. Climate justice and sustainable development are not being held back by a lack of solutions or technology or even courage. They are being held back because of these two challenges. We are told that there is not enough public finance. We are told that private finance must lead the way. And we are told that the limited public funds available should be used to de-risk private investments, to incentivize capital, to unlock the trillions in private capital. But we must ask, whose risks are we absorbing? Whose priorities are we financing? And at what cost? This market-first approach has reduced climate finance to a tool for financial returns and not climate justice. It has turned rights and public goods into investment opportunities, while vulnerable nations shoulder mounting debt and escalating losses. The very same discourse dominates the field of development finance. Essential public services, from health and education to water and energy, are being hollowed out in the name of fiscal discipline and efficiency. Austerity, more borrowings, and the reliance on private finance and the markets are being promoted as the solutions. Time and again, countries are forced to borrow in order to survive, to rebuild after disasters they did not cause. Creditors cultivate dependence while the system punishes any effort to break free. And the result? A world where the poorest countries send more to creditors than they receive for climate or development, and where the rich delay their obligations while lecturing us about responsibility. We cannot speak of overcoming financial barriers without confronting the colonial roots and current injustices of the global financial system, a system still controlled by a handful of creditor nations and financial elites. We must fight for a different financial architecture, one rooted in justice, equity, and reparations. And these are some of the major agendas that will be discussed in the UN Financing for Development, of which the government of Nepal is a very important player as co-facilitator. What are the key demands of many social movements? First, public finance must lead. Public finance, not private capital, must drive climate action and sustainable development. This means scaling up grant-based, non-debt creating finance. Private finance has a role, but it must not and cannot replace public finance. There are immediate ways to increase public resources, ending harmful subsidies to fossil fuel companies and the military-industrial complex, taxing the wealthy through wealth taxes, and prioritizing running after polluters and profiteers, transforming national and the international tax systems to be more progressive and just. Second, we must reclaim public power. We must reinvest in strong public institutions, public banks, and fair taxation systems that can mobilize domestic resources and international resources transparently and equitably. Third, reparations must be paid and climate finance must be delivered in full. The Global North must deliver on their climate finance obligations as part of reparations and not as charity. This includes funds for loss and damage, adaptation and building of resilience, mitigation, and ensuring just transitions. People and communities on the front lines must not only benefit, they must lead in designing and implementing climate responses. Fourth, there has to be immediate cancellation of illegitimate and unsustainable debts. No country should be forced to choose between paying creditors and meeting essential needs. Much of the South's debt, in any case, is the result of supply-driven lending and deliberate cultivation of debt dependence by creditors. Debt cancellation is justice and not charity. Fifth, we must transform global economic governance. We must overhaul or replace global economic and financial institutions and rules that primarily serve to preserve and expand privilege, extractivism, and profit. The new system must be built on parity, mutual respect, and the shared pursuit of climate and development justice. The struggle for climate justice is the struggle for financial justice. It is the struggle for a world where wealth is not hoarded, but shared, where finance serves life, not profit, and where nations and peoples can shape their own destinies. Let us turn from financial paralysis to financial liberation and from structural injustice to transformative solidarity. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lady. You spoke and you gave so much in a very limited time. Thank you. Now, it's very strongly put her remarks. I will just quickly, very quickly, share with you what messages I got. She very strongly said that the role of public finance should be important. It is important. It cannot be replaced by private sectors or any other international assistance or anything, because role of public investment, public finance is critical. And she also provided a lot of ways how to generate public finance, how can public finance be generated, and how accountably we can invest public finance more with accountability. So thank you so much, Lydie. Now I will introduce our esteemed panelists to talk about issues related to financing and strengths that we have, and also to put their thoughts about what can be done to overcome the challenges related to related to climate finance. First, let me invite Dhaniram Sarmaji. Dhaniram ji is Joint Secretary and Head of International Economic Cooperation Coordination Division of the Ministry of Finance, Nepal. Thank you so much. Now, I invite Tasneem Ishop. Yeah. Tasneem Ishop is the Executive Director of Climate Action Network International. Then I'm pleased to invite Dereze. Okay. Dereze Alimayehu. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Yes. Dereze has a PhD in economics from Free University of Berlin. He taught development studies at the university for 12 years, and now he's a CSO actor, civil society organizations. He's involved in civil society organizations. Okay, so we have a very esteemed panelists to talk about what can be done to overcome financial challenges. First of all, I want Tasneem ji to talk about what are the barriers that you see at the moment, and what do you think, how can we overcome those barriers, especially related to climate finance? You have only 5 minutes. 5 minutes, yes.
Thank you very much, and greetings to everybody. Namaste. It's such a privilege to be speaking at this important event and at this time in this world that we are living in. So, following on from what Liddy spoke about in her keynote speech, it's clear that one of the important barriers, at least for those of us who have been following the UNFCCC negotiations for many, many, many years, that, and we'll have to be honest about it, that the key barrier to the provision of climate finance and public climate finance has been the rich nations of the world. Developed nations have an obligation to provide climate finance in terms of the convention. They have an obligation to also act fast in terms of reducing emissions, and on both those fronts they have been lacking. And in fact, they have been obstructing. We know that the first pledges made by rich nations was in Copenhagen, where they committed to $100 billion US per annum, which was not fulfilled. And when we got to Glasgow, they had to apologize for not fulfilling. They didn't even feel embarrassed about the fact that they did not fulfill a commitment that they had made to developing countries, in line with their obligations. So as Liddy says, this is not charity. They've got very clear obligations to fulfill the climate finance for developing countries. We then come to a long negotiation again, and just last year at the COP in Baku, rich nations, well, the first offer was 200 billion, for those of you who follow climate negotiations, which was hugely embarrassing, but eventually ended up with 300 billion, which is super embarrassing. Because at the same time, and Liddy says, people are saying there's no climate finance. I think we should be very clear about that narrative, especially by wealthy nations, that there's no finance, there's no public finance. Because this is the second barrier, prioritization. Rich nations prioritize everything else that is in fact harmful to the people and the planet, takes us in the opposite direction to where we need to be in terms of development, sustainable development, and climate justice. And so, at a stroke of a pen, rich nations can find trillions, not billions, not trillions, for war. We've been watching this. Just in the past year, the cost of the military spending has gone up. And in fact, now even the US government wants NATO to increase their military spend to 5% GDP. 5% GDP. Secondly, as Liddy says, they also find money, public money, our taxpayers' money, to subsidize the fossil fuel industry. Also a harmful industry, an industry that is causing the climate crisis to a large extent. And then, of course, we choose to fund all of the harmful things except what needs to be done to save the lives of people and the planet's. So we're sitting with an existential crisis where the main obstacle, with all due respect, it's not technical, it's not about the lack of finance in the world, it is political. And the political decision by the rich nations is that those in the global south, their lives are basically dispensable. And we witnessed this during the COVID crisis as well. And so when solidarity and international cooperation has to be the way we deal with crises, the response of the global north has essentially been, we take care of ourselves, we take care of our corporate interests, our profits, and the lives in the global south do not matter. So I am being as frank as possible. It's important to be able to identify the problem, and the problem is those who have caused the climate crisis will not take responsibility for addressing the climate crisis and leaving that burden in the hands of global south countries. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tasmin. My modality is that we will have one round of question to panelists, and then we open the floor for a quick round of questions from the audience. And then we will ask panelists to add their own thoughts as well as to respond to the questions coming up, so that we can shape our discussion according to the audience desire as well, right? This one. Oops. So thank you so much, Tasmin. You were very timely, and you gave very clear messages to us. Thank you. Thank you for this. Now I will move to Dereze. What does climate justice looks like in the framework of climate finance and operationalization of these funds? How do you relate climate justice? Because Liddy has very clearly said what the financial resources, how they need to be accountable to climate justice, how international funding should be accountable to climate justice. She has also linked with debt and debt cancellation for climate justice. So it's so many issues she has already read. How do you think about that?
Thank you very much. Maybe from far when you see my cap, it looks like Gamma, MAGA. It is not. It is a casket from the campaign in Africa. Written on it is "Stop the Bleeding."
Stop what's that?
The bleeding.
Stop the bleeding.
Stop the bleeding.
Stop the bleeding. That was what Liddy was also referring to. So stop the bleeding. Okay. I start by this because I'm from the tax justice movement. The Global Alliance for Tax Justice is a coalition of Southern-led global alliance. It has members, tax and fiscal justice Asia, tax justice network Africa, tax justice network in Latin America, in Europe, and Northern America. So it is a global coalition. So what links climate justice and tax justice? It's a very long topic. essentially, in the case of climate, it has been repeatedly said that those who caused it are not affected by it much, and those who are not the cause of the crisis are carrying the burden. When it comes to tax, those who earn more, the rich, are not paying taxes. The tax burden is on the poor. You might have heard there is an American billionaire called Warren Buffett. He said, "I have never understood why my secretary pays more taxes than I." If you look at, there is another case you can see. Apple, the Republic of Ireland is one of the major conduits which helps companies to evade taxes in other countries. That is why the Apples, Microsofts, the Googles have their head office for Europe in Ireland. The European Court ruled that Ireland has helped Apple steal 12 million tax money, so it has to claim to take this money back from Apple and take it as a tax revenue. The one who opposed this ruling was not Apple, but Ireland, the Irish government, because if they were to tax Apple, then they will lose the privilege of attracting tax dodgers from all over the world. It is a business model. So why am I saying this? It is because while our climate justice campaigners say about pledge from the north to be paid because of reparation, because of all the other reasons given, there is still more fundamental thing to finance climate justice, the money that is leaving the south and going to the north. We have, there are a lot of studies taken. For example, if you take Africa, for every $1 coming in the form of aid and whatever, $3 leave the continent. It is, what is the sum of +1 minus 3? What is it? So, can you finance climate justice with that? Can you finance fair transition with that? So that is why the purpose of the tax justice movement is to show there is a perverse flow of resources from the developing region to the global north. Unless we stop this, we cannot have the resources we need to do adaptation, to do transitions and what. So this is the fundamental angle we are bringing into the debate, to link the two things. There is climate justice and tax justice are promoting the interest of the planet, the interest of the poor and the people, whereas the current status quo is such that it allows the tax burden to be more weight on the people, and those who are rich who can pay more are left without any taking any share in the burden. So what you see is actually, if you see northern global north heads of state visiting any southern country, the majority of the delegation is composed of business people. What are they negotiating? Investment with reduced taxation. It is the whole thing is to make them pay less. They get concessions, and again they don't pay. So from our perspective, companies which invest, profit, but do not pay taxes are not investors, but scavengers. This is the major reason also why this perverse flow of resources comes from the south to the north. So in short, it is to say climate finance, climate adaptation, climate action needs resources. It is good to fight for additional resources, but it is by stopping this perverse flow of resources from the south to the north that we can finance the climate action. Actually, we compare it mostly if you want to finance these things with the current status quo, with the current flow of resources, it is like trying to collect water with a sieve. Because as long as these loopholes are there, as long as the illicit financial flows go, you cannot save resources to finance these activities because it is going back. Triple amount of what comes in goes back. So how can you finance anything sustainable in such situation? It's not only the debt repayment, it's not only but it is the illicit financial flows and tax dodging which are taking most of the resources we need for this transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now I move to Daniram sir. Ladies, explain to us why public finance is important. Tasmin told us that we do have very limited fund. It's not because of lack of fund, but because of lack of prioritization. If you want to go to war, you have trillion. If you want to talk about climate finance, then it's billion or even sometimes million or sometimes no finance at all. Now, Derek ji also mentioned about how sort of climate finance is the situation. So you represent government. And Nepal government of Nepal is a co-facilitator for the upcoming 4th UN conference on financing for development. Nepal is also lead of LDC group at the moment. You have been exposed to climate finance. How do you see the opportunities? Now, let's talk about opportunities.
Thank you. It's my very good pleasure to see you here, to be here in this very important discussion. And we have already listened very strong opinions from my previous speaker and also from the keynote speaker. I agree with the main theme, opinion that they have delivered is climate finance is not just issue of money. This is issue of delivery, issue of service, issue of responsibility. It's not just issue of charity. This is issue of reparations, etc. So I completely agree with this approach. So from government side, we have been also having same argument in the global forum that the climate finance commitments are not realized in practice. The developed countries are pledging huge amount of money, as our previous speaker mentioned. But if you look at the data, how much amount of money we have received from the different development partners, this is very negligible. So we are not receiving this amount of pledging that they have made in different platforms. And second, I also agree with the issue of debt. Debt is also one of the major issue now because most of the vulnerable countries, including Nepal, we all already having debt stress. So if developed countries offer debt as a climate finance, developing countries cannot get this access because they are debt stress. They are in debt stress. So I think this is another issue that we have been lobbying in international forum. And third issue is transparency issue. This is another major issue. What is climate finance? How can we calculate climate finance? Whether all the development cooperation that we have received, that we are receiving from multilateral development institutions, bilateral countries, are climate finance or not? So how can we define climate finance? This is another issue. Sometime in discussion, developed countries said we have met our pledging, but we are seeing that you are not meeting your pledging. So this is the difference there. So what is the definition of climate finance? How we can track this kind of financing? This is another issue. So these are some of the major issues in climate financing. And as moderator mentioned, Nepal is as a co-facilitator in the UN conference that is going to be held in Spain in June. So we have mentioned in draft paper. The draft paper is already in public. There we have mentioned these are some of the issues. That there is some climate vertical funds in climate finance like GCF, GEF. There are other climate finance related funds. But the funds, they are, the process of accessing those kind of funds is very difficult. We have very limited access. We don't have direct access. We need to have a lot of process in applying, in designing the project and getting approval from those funds. They're very lengthy process. So one issue is how we can make this kind of direct access to those funds, and then developing countries can access, can get more climate finance from those kind of funds. This is one issue. And second, of course, upscaling the resources. So definitely there is huge demand of the climate financing, not only in vulnerable countries, even in developed countries. Issue of mitigation, adaptation, there are so many issues. If we look at Nepal's figure, if you see the national NDA and adaptation plan or national determined contribution, NDC, national adaptation plan, NAP, if you look at the zero carbon strategy, there is a huge demand of resources. So of course there is issue of upscaling the resources in climate finance. There's another issue that we have mentioned. And third issue is, of course, kind of dialogue, this kind of forum that we can discuss the issues in international society, not only discussing with the global north, also discussing in the global south, discussing the developing countries, sharing the experience among each other. This is another issue. How can we sharing our best practices even within the global south countries? This is another issue that we have mentioned in the event paper. So we are trying to do our best in this element paper to include this kind of climate issues in our upcoming in financing for development conference. But of course, the issue is capacity efficiency, basically in vulnerable countries. How develop the design the projects, most impactful project. In Nepal's experience, what we are seeing is the projects that we are getting support from the climate finance is it's not so impactful. Very small projects, very scattered projects. Small. There is importance. Of course, there is importance of small projects as well that we implement in the community level. But we need to have some impactful projects. We need to have some programmatic approach that we can generate the impact in different sectors like water, irrigation, forest, etc. So this is not the issue. The climate finance projects are not only related to only one sector. This is a cross sectors issue. So how can we develop this kind of cross-sector, multi-sector, integrated approach? How can we develop this kind of programs? This is another important issue. So these are some of the issues that we have been discussing in the implement paper. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dhanraj sir. Now we move to audience, and before moving to our esteemed participants, I just want to acknowledge the presence of Member of Parliament here. I can see our Honorable Member of Parliament from both Upper House and Lower House, including the Chairperson of a Parliamentary Committee. I also acknowledge the presence of academics and scholars here. I see the representatives from bureaucrats and diplomats, and I see representatives from development cooperations. I see many youths and activists. So we have a very diverse group of audience here. I acknowledge all your presence. And now I will move to the forum, to floor, to see questions. It would be very helpful if you can just pinpoint whom you want to answer your question. I also request you to briefly introduce yourself and then ask your question. Thank you. I saw the hand here first, the number 2. I encourage youths, please. Okay, I saw 2 hands from youths as well. So first I take only 5 questions. Ekchin babu, uta paila. Hai, yes.
I'm Uday Samsher Rana, I'm member of Parliament. My question, three foreign panelists. For the last 3 days, what is our strategy? You guys are the climate experts. You are the leaders. So are we just going to keep complaining? The second is Nepal is making a contribution, especially we have reduced our tax completely in the EV sector. Because of that, and we are having revenue issues. We are not able to meet our revenue targets, and that gap, almost 40%, is due to we've lowered the EV tax and the import duty that used to come from the petroleum and the diesel vehicles are not coming in. So me as a representative of the people, I have to start thinking, are we the only guys who are contributing? If nobody else is contributing, why should we? Why should Nepal, restrict our resources? Second is, I think the process is very, very cumbersome, not just money. It's very difficult to get the money. When I was in the finance ministry, the I'll just say example, Green Climate Fund, which is in Seoul, they had said, okay, the private entrepreneurs through the foreign ministry, through the finance ministry can also make an application. And two private entrepreneur companies made application. One of them gave up halfway through. Other one, NIBL Bank, put this fund forward. It took them 6 years to get the money. So it's not just the money. What is our strategy? And why is this such a cumbersome process?
Thank you so much. I move there. Yes.
Hello and namaste everyone. First of all, thank you to panelists and moderator for a wonderful session. My name is Samir Parazili, and I represent a company called AB Biodegradables. And my question is for Dhaniram sir. So my question is simple, simple problem that we faced. So we make biodegradable carry bags, which is an alternative to plastic carry bag. And so it is completely biodegradable and environmental friendly. So it is a eco-friendly approach, right? But what the problem we face is plastic bag. They are cheaper than our bag. It's 1.5 times we are expensive than them. So the shopkeeper, if they are getting the plastic bag in a cheaper amount and they have to sell it for free to their customers, then they deny themselves from buying our bags. So the problem is we have to import raw material, which is corn and sabudana from India, because in Nepal the production is low. So that solution is, there are two types of solution to reduce the cost. First is to produce the raw material in Nepal itself, which is a bit complicated because in 2023 alone, $130 million of corn is imported, and that is only for food. So to make the bags, it is kind of difficult. And the other solution is the problem is we have been facing 66% of custom tax on these products. So if the solution is to reduce this tax, and I want to ask if government can do anything, any support for this initiative and to reduce the tax that we have been talking about. So that's my question.
Thank you, Samirji. Ajay, yes. No, yeah. I know. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. I am Govinda Badursai. I'm from Humla and representing Kirak, Nepal. And I am also campaigner of sustainable mountain development, and then I raise the voices of the mountain people in every national and international forum. Now the four panelists summary is, we have been crying many times in many forums, but the global north is not listening our voices. The summary was that. So if they are not listening, what will be the next step to make them listen for the climate finance? Thank you.
Yeah, I have. Okay. More executive woman. Yes.
Good morning and namaste. This is Sabdana Pokhil, chairperson from Jagar, Nepal, and scholar too. Well, we heard the things are clear, agenda is clear. Despite those barriers, so our agenda would be heard, let's be optimistic, and climate finance will reach to our all local level. So that is our voice, and then there will be justice. But meantime, the climate change and consequences would already threat lives, physical, mental health, emotional, our values of lives, development work, and peace. On the whole ecosystem and food chain, and also the whole tapestry of the earth have been affected, disturbed. So who will be responsible despite that financial climate finance? So climate finance plus climate action we need to definitely think. And then the way we have started climate action, so the global north also should go parallelly. They have to reduce all those things. So for that, what is our voice, what we are saying, so that we can preserve our earth? Thank you so much.
Thank you. For this round, I take only 3 hands now that I have seen. Lal sir. And then we will come back again in another session.
Good morning. It is really one of the very interesting and important sessions, if I see it from the past 2 days. An issue has been surfaced, challenges has been recognized, and a lot of development stakeholders, including LDC and DCP countries, are already into actions. The way I see the difference is, as previous persons also said, that it's really a process is time consuming, resource consuming, and you need a lot of expertise that most of the LDC, DC may not able to cope up with it. And the document guidelines is made such that it is really a cumbersome, it takes long time. So in order to break through this process, I think the developed nations, rich nations will have to work together with the least developed countries, along with the government and private sectors. I think that way we can reduce the time and process. Second thing, I noticed that money is always a need. Even rich nations needs money because they are progressing fast and we are also progressing, though it's slow. So what I can suggest is finance is always linked with the risks, and there is always a risk in order to get the action, even for climate change mitigation measures. So I suggest maybe we should go for natural disaster, including climate effects, from the insurance coverage. So the insurance, I don't know whether it's covered in Baku, whether the nations, developing nations and the developed country, they have worked through or not. Because with the insurance, I think they will be much more easier for rich nations to provide fund. And ultimately, in case of Nepal, there is a lot of opportunity. We should take this as opportunity because the thing has already happened. Devastation have been taking place here. So in order to complain, I think instead of complaining, we should take this now as an opportunity because we cannot go back and repair it. So in order to move forward, I think it's an opportunity. We need to work together, public and private sector, along with the parliamentarians, and make a nice proposal across forest sector, agriculture sector, infrastructure sectors, so that we can attract or get as much as possible from the climate change funds. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I have seen Dr. Anjan Sakya raising hands. Dr. Anjan Sakya is member of parliament as well as she represents in IPU, International Parliamentary Union. She represents Nepal there, and she was elected actually as a global parliamentarian to talk about and to work on sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste. Good morning, everyone here. This is very significant meeting that we are holding now, and I'm seeing very promising leaders in front of us. And Lady, that I know few months back, and I found her like she is a promising progressive activist leader in the world that I would like to mention here. And I would like to raise my question to Lady and Joint Secretary Dhaniram. What I would like to say, Lydie just mentioned for transformative change on taxes, especially tax policies and strategies. So financial mechanisms can really ensure just transition for vulnerable population. And what we are discussing today is climate commitments. Climate finance commitments should be very, very firm. And which we are talking now is lacking from developed country, rich country, who are the main key role playing to promote, to grow emissions, and they are not listening to us. So here, what I want to raise, some questions, some feelings already raised by my colleagues just before, but I would like to put my words, my voice together with them. What role do international financial institutions, public and private sector you mentioned, play in promoting sustainable development, bringing climate resilient projects with just transition? And another one is what innovative, these questions may be genuinely answered by Dhaniram, Joint Secretary of our Ministry of Finance. What innovative financing model support mechanism systems that we can say both climate action and social equity to make transparency and accountability in climate finance? These are my questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We end this round now. We will quickly ask our panelists to respond to your questions very quickly. Then if time permits, we can come back again to the floor. Shall we start from Lydie?
Okay. There's one common question from several people that I'd like first to address, and that is, what are we going to do, because we've been raising these issues and the global north governments and countries don't seem to be listening. I cannot say that we have not made progress. There have been a number of things that we have won, even though at the beginning it seemed very impossible, and I'd let Tasneem speak a little bit more about this particular example I'm going to raise to show that there are some fruits from all this hard work that we've been doing campaigning, and that is winning on the loss and damage fund. Like 10 years back, this would be for us almost like an impossibility, because the global north countries, including and especially that of the United States, remember in the Paris Agreement, one of the conditions they made to agreeing to sign the deal, and then they later on pulled out, is this decision point that there must not be any recognition of liability nor giving any compensation for loss and damage. So you would not imagine in 2015 that several years later in Glasgow and Sharm el-Sheikh, we actually won this decision to having a loss and damage fund. So there is those kinds of progress, very slow, too slow, but there are some key things, and again, maybe Tasneem can speak more about it because she was much closer in this particular arenas. There are some couple of key things we've found is very important. Of course, it's very important that civil society engages directly with governments. Not just our own governments from our own countries, but also with the governments of the North. And one of the key things we've found is if that G77 plus China remains together and not break apart, then many things move in the negotiations. But the global North countries know that, so they play a lot of games of divide and rule. But that's one of the things that we really need. And in Baku, when we had this horrible decision out of the NCQG process of 300 billion, it's also because some governments in the G7, this is something we will not say in public, no, but we're saying this in this conversation. Also because some governments in the G77 plus China broke ranks. So in the end, we had that horrible decision of $300 billion. This much we know, because civil society alone, the global North governments can, continue to ignore us. But if our governments listen to us and keep together, then things can move. The other thing that we've been working on is that the voices of civil society and movements inside the North should be stronger than they are now. Because that's the voices that the global North governments will listen to. Maybe not so much in the beginning. They have to be far stronger than they currently are. So that's just one thing I have to offer. And then now the direct question about what can IFIs and public financial institutions do? What else can we do in terms of making sure the finance moves? Like I know about the GCF. I served on the board of GCF for 4 years as civil society observer. The active observer is what they're called when you're allowed in the room and you can speak. You can't vote, but you can speak. It is very slow. It's very slow. It's not only is the money not enough, but the operations of the fund, and now the loss and damage fund might end up in the same place, that things move very slowly. But we also, that is also where we need to work closely with our developing countries, as they're called there in that space, developing country board members, to make sure that we put in place policies that will not only make moving the finance faster, but moving the finance to where it should go. And much as I sympathize that the private sector institutions that we're going to have access, we're not accessing as fast, but imagine, the more important is the access by governments. And that is even moving even slower. So yeah, we have to work on that. We need to work on them delivering, and then we need to work on making sure the allocation and the flow is fast and efficient. But first, the delivering. Because one of the things that has created a lot of tensions within the board and tensions between developing countries is that there's so little money. And therefore, if there's so little money, there's a lot of intensity in the discussion about how to allocate it. And then, this is also giving way to a situation where our developing country governments are even more vulnerable to the divide and rule tactics, because there's so very little money, and then they end up fighting with each other about this very little money. So I'll leave the rest to my colleagues.
Thank you. Okay, two questions, two areas where I wanted to mention a few things. In terms of tax, I will divide it into two. There is a homework part, which countries should do in their respective economies in their countries, and then there is the international dimension, which cannot be done by by individual countries. To come to the question you raised, I don't know about the details, but to say one thing, tax is not only about collecting money. Tax is also a regulation mechanism. It is a mechanism by which you, for example, in the case of, if you link it with climate finance, it is about supporting those who are working in a way that is not damaging the climate, and then penalizing those which are causing harm to the climate. The other day in another discussion, Tasnim was giving an example. The fossil fuel industry gets 7 trillion subsidy. They are being paid for ruining the planet. So that is how tax policies can affect. Actually, what should have happened is to penalize them, to make them pay more to clean up what they have dirtied, instead of giving them money to continue what they are doing. So that is where government should have a policy in which they exactly support those who are producing in an ecologically sensible manner, and penalizing those who are damaging more. About strengths, at the international level, what can we do? It is already really happening, as Didi said in another context. When G77 plus China stand together, they have the possibility of moving things, changing rules and mechanisms, how they operate. That is why, for example, in the case of tax, when the current international tax rules are created 100 years ago, and they are not adapted to the political situation, to the economic situation, but they're still, and then they favor the already the home countries of multinational corporations. That is why there was the rule making was done by the OECD. The standards were set by OECD. Developing countries, the G77 plus China demanded a UN tax body to revise and fix the broken international tax system. They were denied this during the third Financing for Development conference in Addis. Now, the Africa Group and the G77 have managed to pass a terms of reference to create a UN tax convention in which the demands and the rights of developing countries will be considered, and they are also at the table. Actually, when the movement started for this UN process, the slogan was, the OECD was making the rules without our participation from the South. So we had a slogan which said, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. So that changed now. The countries are at the table on an equal footing. So the process of creating a UN tax convention is going. So the homework at the country level is really a domestic issue. Governments should prioritize, and it is their responsibility to make it climate just and socially just. But at the international level, the only possibility to do it is as within the bloc of the G77 and plus China. It is a very big negotiating bloc, and if they don't let themselves divided, they can move things, they can determine international rule making and standard setting.
Has, thank you so much. Dan Lamsa.
I have received two questions. One is related to tax, custom duty on raw material. This is very, I have to say, very critical time now, because I don't want to speak this particular issue because parliamentary are here. Because after 2 weeks, after 10 days, we will have financial bill. So if I speak from here, then what will they will do for me? It's very difficult. But issue is, but principally, what I want to say is, principally, we have policy that raw materials duty should be lower than the finished good. That's total principle. So if you have this issue, just discuss with the concerned agencies. If they really issue, then I think you can get some solution. But I don't want to speak that the government is going to do this. This is not the time. This is not a good time to speak on this. Second, about this issue of innovative solutions, as Honorable Member of Parliament asks, we are trying our best. I'm not saying that we are not doing anything. We are trying our best. So I think if I did not clearly mention, please bear with me. Because what I'm saying is, we are doing our best, but we are lobbying into the international society. That's what I wanted to say, because domestically also we are doing something. We do have climate change tracking system, climate finance tracking system. I don't think in many countries there is no this kind of tracking system. We do have in the budget. We track how much amount of money we allocate for the climate finance. What is the tracking system for a long time. We are trying to develop, as Honorable Member of Parliament mentioned, we have some big steps in mitigation, like electric vehicle and other issues. So we are trying through our domestic resources. But the issue is not a domestic issue. Issue is global. So that's why we are raising the issue in the international community. So we are also trying to align our policies and priorities in climate issue. We are trying to develop. We have, as I said, we have NAP, we have NDC, all commitments we have. We have excellent plan we have. But the issue is financing is a major issue, and the current resource is not sufficient to finance all those kind of actions, strategies. That's why we are raising the issue. This is not the issue of any country specific. This is issue of global. That's why there should be some kind of collaboration, global solidarity. That's why we are raising this issue. So innovative solutions, particularly in foreign aid funded projects, we are trying to develop integrated programmatic approach. As I said, because the issue is not any sector specific. The climate issue is not sector specific. The issue of different sectors, cross sectors as an issue. For example, if we talk about water resource, the issue is also related to forest, irrigation. So if we only develop a project in any sector, it cannot give a complete solution. So what the government is trying in some projects is trying to develop cross sectors programmatic approach rather than just project specific approach. So this is what we are trying to develop. But in government funded projects, we are not having this kind of programmatic approach. But in foreign aid funded project, we have started this kind of developing cross agency, cross sector approach that we can properly handle the climate change issues. Rather than this government funded projects, even in the private sector financing also, we wanted to have some innovation. For example, green bond. Recently, the NMB Bank is going to issue green bond. This is a very long-standing debate in Nepal because we have huge potential of this green bond. We have initiated now. So in the near future, we will start with this green bond, which is one of the major steps. We can raise the money from the private sector, and we can utilize this money into the climate projects. Similarly, in monetary side also we have done something. We have green taxonomy now. Nepal Rashtra Bank has developed green taxonomy. Now the banks and institutions, they can use this green taxonomy. They can divide their activities in reference with climate issues or green issues. So we are domestically trying to do some innovative works in this particular issues. But the issue is we need to do more in adaptation side rather than mitigation side, because we developing countries, we are not very much responsible in emission. We in mitigation, we need to work more on adaptation. So in adaptation side, we still need to do a lot to develop this kind of innovative ideas in mobilizing public resources as well as private resources.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for this useful information, Dhaniram sir. May I move to Tasneem now?
Thank you very much. So I also want to pick up on the issue about what strategies.
Yes.
Now the first thing is we shouldn't be feeling bad about raising what the problems are. So this is not about complaining, because climate finance is a justice issue. The rich causing the crisis owes the global south money, its reparations. So first we have to always make them remember that. Always remind them. So that's the first point. Secondly, there's an Arabic saying that says, trust in God, but tie your camel. So while we fight for the justice to get the climate finance from the north, who's not actually delivering that, we need to look at the alternatives. And the way we should do that is to ensure very strong South-South solidarity and collaboration. When we spoke about the times we win in these negotiations are the times when the G77 plus China stands united. That's when we make progress, because it's the collective power of the South, backed up by the movements and civil society, that we see delivery in these negotiations. And the Loss and Damage Fund is a very good example of that. Very good example. It took 30 years, ladies, given the history of the US resistance, etc. And as movements, we decided, it was during COVID, that the people who are suffering from COVID are the most vulnerable to the pandemic, are the same sections of society that is most vulnerable to climate change. So you can't go to a COP and say there's nothing that we can do for all of those who are vulnerable to multiple crises. And it wasn't on the agenda. We put it on the agenda. And we had the G77 plus China back us. Now, the same thing happened in Baku. We went into Baku making very high demands as civil society. We said the rich nations owe the global south 5 trillion in debt. Why did we do that? Because we wanted our global south governments to strengthen their position. They were going in with, the highest amount, I think, came from India, 1.3 trillion, but all the other submissions from developing countries were pretty low. Now, you don't start a negotiation with a low, at the lowest point. That's, in fact, where we ended up with the rich nations. And we wanted our developing countries to stand strong and stand united and get what you are owed. We nearly did that. And then, as Liddy says, unfortunately, in the last few days, the last night actually, G77 collapsed. So the most important thing to make progress is a G77 plus unity, and listen to the movements, because we go into those spaces to back our governments. Even though sometimes we're really not happy with what our governments do back home, but in that space, we join you. So that's the one lesson. The other thing is, we also tend to just accept what the global north tells us about how the economy must work, how our development must work, etc. Why are we not choosing our own development pathways? Why are we not ensuring our sovereignty through our own ways of development? Now, we all buy into the story about de-risking capital, the private sector's role. Insurance, let me tell you, Germany came up with an insurance proposal called the Global Shield in Egypt. It's not going to work. The majority of the people who suffer from climate change impacts are uninsured. And so we need to take care of our own people. And the way we do that is to fight for what is owed in terms of reparations. But also, as I said, let's be bold enough to stand up and not just accept these things. And we stand behind you as civil society, as movements. But we can't keep on fighting if you, as governments of the global south, are just willing to just give up as well. We must use our collective strength to be a good negotiators to get what we are owed. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tasneem. You are very empowering. Thank you so much. Now, we have very limited time. We have 5-6 minutes only left. So I have one question for all the panelists. And I want panelists to give me answer in 2 sentences only. The question is general for all. The question is, what could be the role of Sagarmatha Sambaad type of platform to carry on the climate finance related issues, and how to make North respond to this? The role of Sagarmatha Sambaad type of platform. Liddy.
Yes, thank you. We were very happy to hear that the Nepal government was hosting this quite well ahead of the UN Financing for Development Conference. That's why we wanted our discussions to be focused on finance, because we need every chance we get to get governments to listen to what other governments have to say and what civil society has to say. So the more platforms we have like this, where governments are invited to have a dialogue, to have an open dialogue, none of the very huge pressures of official negotiations would go a long way, I believe, in paving for more kind of openness, no, to hear out what various actors have to say, including and most especially governments and civil society from the Global South.
Thank you.
in my case,
Just
you know,
focus on what role Sagarmatha Sambaad
yes,
can
that's
have.
what I am the Bandung generation, and for me, I wish them to be a platform where the spirit of Bandung comes back.
Right. Thank you, Daniram sir.
I think this is the very good opportunity to express our storytelling. Yeah, because this is we can bring the attention of the developed countries, MDBs. What is the situation like mountainous country like Nepal? How can we have better access in the kind of financing? I think this is the very good story. That's what I am saying.
But how do we carry this on? Because we cannot leave everything we discuss here. We cannot leave it here. How do we carry the issues?
Yeah. The one major good opportunity here now this time is we are having financing for development conference next month in June in 30th June and to July 4, and probably our very high level representation will be there in Spain, and this summary of this Sagarmatha Sambaad can be very much fruitful to bring the attention of the global community in this conference.
Tasneem.
Thank you. I think, as Ludi says, of course, we need all platforms, and especially platforms that invite multiple stakeholders. I believe Nepal can lead by doing that, by ensuring it is a global event as it is. And one of the things I would propose, though, is that we have hard conversations, because we have many summits. We have many summits where people are sharing stories and, talking about the issues. Sometimes we need to also create space for the harder conversations to happen. We shy away from that. And so in a very nice way, to put those kinds of issues on the agenda would be a good thing as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful thoughts. We wish that all the discussions that we had today, yesterday, and day before yesterday, they can be carried on in different forms and taken to different forums relevant for us, so that people can respond to the issues that we have raised here. I thank you, panelists, and I thank you, wonderful audiences, for your wonderful, very active participation and questions and thoughts. Thank you, Lady, for the keynote speaker. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Namaste.